good morning. I am so glad that we got here. These are our brave folks who brave getting out of their ice-covered driveways. I'm glad you're here. So we're beginning a brand new series today, and I thought, to get us started as we are talking about career goals, I thought maybe this might be the video to help us get to thinking about our career goals. So watch this screen. That was a Super Bowl commercial from 1999. Some of you recognize that because you were watching that day. Nobody has these as career goals, yet sometimes we just find ourselves at a job and we just feel like that job is headed nowhere, or we feel like it's just kind of a dead end. Maybe the money's not good, or the hours are not good, or the conditions aren't good. And do we need to mention those annoying coworkers, right? They're horrid. So the job's not good if all of those things are happening, or a few of those things are happening, and we might, by the end of the day, we might come home and we are just absolutely drained, but we know we've got to work, right? We got to pay the bills. And here's what kind of makes that even worse, if it could be said to be even worse. 1/3 of your life is going to be spent sleeping. 1/3 of your life. The second third of your life is going to be spent at work. Absolutely. That is most of your life. We've already accounted for. We can't do much about your sleep, but at work, listen, for some of us, it just could be miserable, right? Now, let's talk about careers for just a moment, because there's so many different kinds of careers. For some of us, your job, your career is your family. And everything you do to make the home run, to make the house run, everything you're involved with. And then there's some other people, they actually leave the house for their job or their career. Some people work from home for another company for their job or their career. Other people are retired now and they're looking backwards at their job and career and saying, got that done. But whatever state you are in your life, if you're a student and going to school, that is your career right now. So whether you're retired or you leave the house and punch a clock, we all have a career in our lives, whether we're students or whether we are retired. So if you're retired or you're managing your home, just think about it like this. Your career is all of the people around you. Every interaction you have within your family and within the community, all the store employees, all the teachers you come into contact with, all the healthcare professionals, and are we on it right? That gets more and more, right? All the restaurant staff you come into contact with, every employee, everywhere, everyone you bump into, that is your career, because you are in the career of life and living life with people. And some of you are retired. That includes you in the retirement, managing a household, whether you're retired, or whether you maybe punch a clock, okay? We all have a career that we're invested in. And many times we have career goals. We have a goal to get a promotion or a raise, a goal to have better working conditions, maybe different hours. We have a goal maybe for more opportunities within whatever we're doing for a career, maybe longer hours. We have a goal for more responsibility so that maybe you can infect in a good way change inside of your organization. And if you are retired, maybe you have a goal of enjoying your retirement and still paying your bills, right? Maybe your career goals from home, you have career goals of raising your family and seeing your family move through the growing process and become contributing members of society. You have goals, in that case, of change and growth inside of each individual in your home. But sometimes, even if we are achieving some of these goals, these big things we want to accomplish, sometimes we are still adrift with our career, wondering, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Where am I going with this? Is this it? Is this all I have to expect? What's my purpose in this? Is this going to be my life? But that doesn't have to be the case. Now, last month, we spent all of January kind of defining and describing what a disciple looks like. And specifically, we were talking about what does a disciple look like in Stuttgart Harvest Church and in the church in Malvern. What does a disciple look like? How do they function inside of the church? But we know we're not just here in this church. We're only here at best an hour or two on once a week, right? That's at best. But we are a disciple absolutely everywhere we go. Everywhere our foot touches the ground, in that spot, in that moment, we are a disciple. And so I would say, especially at work, in your career, whether you're retired or at school or a homemaker or whether you leave the house for a job, we are a disciple there. And we have to answer the question, what does God want from us there? What is His career goal for you? And I can tell you at least one of those goals. I can't tell you all of them. That's between you and Him. But I know at least one, and maybe just possibly the top career goal that He has for your life. Career goal is this: be a disciple at work. Now, what might that look like to be a disciple at work? And that's what this series is all about. And today I have two words for you. Two words. Here they are. Be kind. At work, be kind. Now, Cole and I, we have always told, he has told his family, I have told my family, since they were little, we should always be kind. Now, we don't really use the word be nice so much because niceness is already implied with kindness. But I think there's a difference in being nice and being kind. Being nice simply means possibly that we're just pleasant, we can be agreeable, and it's kind of on the surface level. Be nice to your brother. Hey, doesn't want to be nice, but okay, on the surface I can be, right? Be nice. But being kind goes much deeper. Being kind requires something special. Being kind requires some bit of genuineness and empathy for others in our actions, in our behaviors toward other people. It proves our empathy. Kindness requires honesty, and it requires sometimes courage to be kind when someone is unkind to you. It goes well beyond what is expected of being nice. Nice always stays on the surface. Kind and kindness penetrates the soul. If I were to choose one word today to describe what a Christ follower looked like, I think it would be kind. Now, Paul wrote a letter to the churches in Colossae. It's the letter to the Colossians is what it's called. And this letter is full of life, the life of an authentic follower of Jesus Christ and what that looks like. And Paul reminds us that there's this new life and it's coming, it's leaving the old life. There's this new life and it's resulting from growth. And he shows us how disciples actually began growing from what they were into what God is making them. And it is in Colossians where Paul unpacks what a growing disciple looks like, sounds like, acts like. And he says a disciple should be getting better. We, as disciples, should be kinder, even at work. As a disciple of Jesus, we should all be getting more and more kind. Even at the place called work, where we have a tendency to be our snippiest, where we have a tendency to be our most irritable because of customers or because of coworkers or because of supervisors, where we have a tendency to be our grouchiest, we are called to be kind and growing in our kindness. And look, I know. We all have that. At least Cole can say this. I can't really say this. We all have this one coworker who drives us nuts. And that's me, right? It's the truth. We all have possibly this one supervisor that just gets on our last nerve. A customer that causes us to crash out and we run the other way when we see them coming. Our fuse gets shorter. Our anger comes faster. Our patience is already used up by the time we get to work just from driving, right? So each growing year, enduring work and slugging it out, it becomes more and more difficult, and we become more and more difficult, and we become more and more grumpy. And something strange happens. We begin to segment our Christian, Christ-following, disciple life into little categories. And so we've created a new path of worship. At Stuttgart Harvest Church and the Church of Malvern, we say that worship is everything you say and everything you do. The question is who? So we're worshiping all the time. So we say, everything we say, we want it to be worship to God. Everything we do, we want it to be worship to God. But when it comes to work, we say, worship is everything we say and everything we do, except at work. Because, come on, it's work, and it's them, right? But if that's what we're doing, then we have sidelined 1/3 of our lives from worship. We have said this whole section, this big part of my life is not going to be under God's leadership, under the Spirit's leadership, when that is what He requires, which is all of your life. It doesn't make sense for us to segment our lives because we should be getting kinder. And if this is part of the fruit that God is producing in your life as a disciple, we should be getting kinder even at work. We must allow God into our work lives. For the disciple of Christ, this is the career goal. You see, we disciples, we remain under construction. He is building you into a disciple by being a disciple. And we have to remain under construction all the time. It's not just when we walk into here that we put on our Christian, Christ-following disciple hard hats and go to work and allow Him to work on us. No, we are even under construction as a disciple as we walk into our place of work. And here's how Paul unpacks this. I'm going to read through some verses that we broke down in a book called 42 Days with Jesus. I want to read through these quickly, and then we're going to move on to some other things. But here's what Paul says about this Christ following, this disciple life that applies even at work. He says in verse 1 of chapter 3, "Since you have been raised to a new life with Christ, set your sights on the realities of heaven, where Christ sits literally in the place of honor at God's right hand." He is saying we are on this earth for something more than anything on this earth. We were made for more. And this, what Paul is saying, is more than us just looking forward to the day that we are in heaven with God, with Christ. It's more than that. It goes beyond that. Listen to what N.T. Wright said. Here's what he said about this. He's a famous theologian. Jesus' resurrection is the beginning of God's new project. That's us, right? Not to snatch people away from earth to heaven, meaning as soon as they become a disciple, a follower of His, but to colonize earth with the life of heaven. That, after all, is what the Lord's Prayer is all about. And we would add to that, even at work. Paul goes on in verse 2. "Think about the things of heaven, not the things of earth." In other words, remember, God, this is more than just what's happening here. And in order for God, we've talked about this in January, in order for Him to transform you, to change you, He must, and you must allow Him to begin changing the way you think. And Paul says, think about more than just what you're going through on this earth, more than just going to work, more than just punching the clock. Let me read verse 5 in that same chapter. "So put to death the sinful earthly things lurking within you." Everywhere we go, we are under construction as a disciple. He says, put to death the sinful earthly things lurking within you. Have nothing to do with sexual immorality, impurity, lust, and evil desires. He says, don't be greedy, for a greedy person is an idolater, worshiping the things of this world. And he goes on and on. This is such a powerful chapter. Let me read verse 7. He said, you used to do these things. In other words, all of those things, that whole list, sexual immorality, all of that, lust. He said, you used to do that, but no longer. God is changing you. He's transforming you. Wow. You used to do these things when your life was still part of this world, but no more. You're changing. You're being transformed. Your behaviors, your responses, your reactions, they're changing because you are no longer rooted in this earth. You're now thinking about things as He transforms you from a different perspective. Paul goes on to offer us a list, almost like a checklist, of things that he says these are going to become ever growing and ever increasing different in your life and in my life if we're a disciple, even at work. Verse 8, but now is the time to get rid of anger and rage and malicious behavior and slander and dirty language, he says. Verse 9, don't lie to each other, for you have stripped off your old sinful nature and its wicked deeds. Verse 10, put on your new nature and be renewed as you learn to know your Creator and become like Him. In this new life, he says, it doesn't matter if you're Jew or Gentile, circumcised or uncircumcised, barbaric or uncivilized, slave or free. He says, Christ is all that matters, and He lives in all of us. And then he goes on to say, instead of letting evil push you into your decisions and your behaviors and your responses and your actions, here's what he says in verse 12. Since God chose you to be the holy people He loves, you must clothe yourself with tender-hearted mercy, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Make allowance for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. Remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. Above all, he says, clothe yourself with love, which binds us all together in perfect harmony, and let the peace that comes from Christ rule in your hearts. For as members of one body, you are called to live in peace and always be thankful. Let the message about Christ in all its richness fill your lives. He just described disciples, even at work. Wow. Disciples, even at work, should be getting better. They should be getting more and more, ever increasingly loving. They should be getting more and more forgiving and more kind. So now, with the few minutes that we have left, I want to give you 4 ways that we can all be kind at work. Whether our career is managing our homes, or whether our career is being glad we're not working anymore and just making sure we can still pay our bills in the retirement life, or whether our career is at school as a student, or whether our career is punching a clock or we're on salary, it doesn't matter, or whether we work for ourselves. 4 ways we can be more kind at work. And I was telling Cole, I don't think I have used an acronym probably in 20 years. I feel like it. But I felt this is all so fitting as we're talking about careers. And if you punch a clock, every wall you look at in that room where you punch a clock is probably filled with acronyms that Human Resources has put up in your break room in your area. So we have an acronym to get us started today. 4 ways to be kind. Kind. And 4 ways your kindness will grow at work. Most of this is coming from that chapter in Colossians chapter 3. So here's the first way that we can be more kind at work. K, keep excellence high. That means at work, whether it's at home or retired and you're in the community with other people, or you're a student, or you work for yourself and you have customers, no matter your career, keep excellence high. It means your best effort all the time. Now, in the first century, when Paul was writing this, most people were largely self-employed. There were not a lot of corporations back then, not a lot of employers. Most people worked for themselves. And so the best context we can get for ourselves, if we want to call ourselves an employee, and I know this stings, and I know this sounds harsh, but especially to our modern ears, but it kind of is what it is, because in the bigger picture, this is a picture of, for us, employment. Colossians, now we're going to jump to verse 22. Listen to what he says. Slaves, You're like, yeah, you got that right. That's the way I feel at work. Slaves, obey your earthly masters. Employees, obey your earthly supervisors, employers, in everything you do. And look at what he says in verse 23. And work willingly at whatever you do as though you were working for the Lord rather than for people. I was talking to Melissa this morning, one of our dear folks who has to listen online, Miss Madeline. She is recouping right now in a rehab facility for just physically health reasons. And so her job right now is to get well and to get better. That is her career and her focus right now. But while she's there, everything she does and every interaction that she has with every CNA and every staff member and every healthcare provider that she sees every single day with occupational therapy and rehab, all of that, every person she comes into contact with, she is now not pleasing them. That's not the goal. She's working to please the Lord. And so are you at your job. And so am I. And if you're retired, it's every interaction you have. If you're a homemaker, it's everything you have to do to provide. When you have to go and supply your home, you are at work. When you are having to go to that teacher's parent conference and find out why your child's name is on the board, you are at work. We all have careers, and we are not working for the man, we're working for the King. Every time we show up at whatever that job is. Do you see how, in this way, the reputation of Christ is directly tied to the quality of your work? A Christ follower must work differently. Because first and foremost, we're not working to please them. Although, if we please Him, we will please them. Keeping our excellence high will certainly please this boss. That's K, keeping our excellence high. Here's the I in kind, integrity. Do the right thing even when nobody is looking. Here's the second part of verse 22 that we skipped. Try to please them, your employer, your boss, all the time, not just when they're watching you. Serve them sincerely. Why? Because they deserve it. Why? Because you owe it to them. Why? No. He gives us why. Out of reverent fear, out of reverent awe for God, for the Lord. Because practicing doing the right thing when no one is working is a choice that we make. And it must be growing. Our integrity must be growing as we are becoming more and more the disciple that God is creating in you. Integrity is not just inherent. We're not born with the desire to do the right thing because it's the right thing. We're born with the desire to get the result we want. But God's Spirit is at work transforming your life, and integrity is part of that. K-I-N. No compromising shortcuts. No compromising shortcuts. Here's what he says in the next verse, 24. Remember that the Lord will give you an inheritance as your reward. Because why? You're serving Him. You're pleasing Him. And that the master you are serving is Christ. You're actually serving Christ. He's going to handle the end game, the big reward. He's going to take care of that. Verse 25. But if you do what is wrong, if you take a shortcut, if you do what is wrong, you will be paid back for the wrong you have done. For God has no favorites. You don't have to worry about what's going to happen at work. If you're taking shortcuts, God's going to take care of it. Somehow, some way, at some time. But here's the question with this. How do we know if we are taking shortcuts? And here's what I would say to that, to answer that question. God is in the process of transforming you. He's in the process of transforming me. I, Harley, have not arrived. He is still changing me. That list we just read in Colossians chapter 3 as we began, He is still in the process of doing that transformation in my life. I have not arrived. But how do you know? How do I know if I'm taking a shortcut? Here's how. Because He is in the process. His Spirit has moved into my life. If you're following Jesus, He's moved into your life. And His Spirit is at work transforming you. And do you know the mighty tool that He has given you and given me for the Spirit to use for transformation in your life? And it is called Scripture. And the more you are in Scripture, and the more His Spirit is putting that into your life and making those changes from the inside out, the more you will then inherently know that's a shortcut. I don't need to do that. And the more you'll know, the more you're transformed, the more you'll know. If we're growing, we won't have to worry about the shortcut and it sneaking up on us. We'll just know, I don't need to do that way. I need to do it the right way. K-I-N, here's the D. Don't forget, you are there for a purpose. I want to use another verse here in Colossians chapter 3 still, but verse 17. And whatever you do or say, do it as a representative of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks through God the Father. Whatever you do, you at work represent Him. At home, as a homemaker, and when you leave to prepare the way for your family and the life for your family and what you do, you are representing Him. In that teacher-parent conference, you're representing Him. Parents, at the Little League game, you're representing Him, not your family name. You represent Him. At the sports complex, at work, at school. This is your career goal. Represent Him. By the way you work, by the way you interact with these people around you, what reputation have you been building for Jesus? By the way you talk to people, what reputation have you been building for Jesus? By what you say to the referee and the umpire and the coach and other players, what are you representing about Jesus? By the way you use your time at work, by the way you do what is expected and go beyond, or by the way you slack and cut back and do as little as you can, what are you representing of Jesus? What reputation have you been building about Jesus? Because you, according to Paul and all the apostles, you, as his follower, are representing him. And you are representing his purpose. Because now, his purpose is your purpose. And here's where we're going to be wrapping this up today. His example, the example that Jesus set himself, is now what you must model as you represent him at work. So let's look a little bit closer on this last point. Don't forget, you are there for a purpose. So as we look at the life of Jesus, Jesus interacted with the relationships and the people around him with love and compassion. Now, we do find a few exceptions to that, and they're almost always self-righteous religious people. Everyone else, Jesus leads with compassion. And I would say even in that, he's leading with compassion for all the people that they were abusing. But Jesus leads with compassion. So here's what I want to do. Let's look. What does it mean? Don't forget that you are there for a purpose beyond just your paycheck. You're there for a purpose. So let's look at Jesus and an interaction that was normal for him. Matthew chapter 9, verse 35. Jesus traveled through all the towns and villages of that area, teaching in the synagogues and announcing the good news about the kingdom. I want you to know, Jesus was not lazy. Jesus worked really, really hard. And he healed every kind of disease and illness. And we know that Jesus often went and he physically was touching people who were, according to the day, untouchable. He frequently was around people that physically were untouchable, and he would touch them. That socially and morally were untouchable because they were outcasts, and he would touch them. He would be with them. He would be around them. He healed every kind of disease and every kind of weakness. He connected with the people who were rejected and dejected, and there were crowds of people. Verse 36, when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them. Jesus in that moment was not worried about himself. Jesus in that moment did not put himself first. And listen, if anyone had a right to put themselves first, I would think it would be God, who chose to put on the flesh and blood of a human. Jesus had the right to think of himself. To come here and be like, I'm doing this for you, you ungrateful bunch of people. I'm doing this for you. You're ungrateful. Yeah, and here's the comparison we have used in the past. It would be like us becoming a chihuahua and having to remain a chihuahua for eternity. That's what it would be like. And so we would be like, hey, listen, I am a chihuahua for you, bunch of scoundrels? And you're going to talk to me this way, and you're going to treat me this way, and you're going to, I'm doing this for you. But Jesus was not that way. Jesus was not that way. He looked at them with compassion. If anyone had a right to say, this is me before you, you better treat me better. I'm doing this for you. No. Jesus showed us how to say, you before me. Jesus led with compassion. Why? Because they were confused and helpless. confused and helpless. And we know sometimes they're confused and helpless. Our friends and people at work, some of them are confused and helpless because of oppression. Some of your coworkers, maybe the most grouchy and hardest to get along with and the grumpiest, are probably under the oppression of just living life. And they have created a truckload of oppression from things that have not been properly dealt with and worked through and worked out, and they've carried it from one person, from another person, and they carry it all. And they're oppressed from life. Some people are confused and helpless because of exhaustion. Yeah. You have coworkers that are simply exhausted from living life. You have coworkers who are confused and helpless because of a lack of direction. They have been scattered and isolated and separated. We are the most connected people in the world with our phones and our technology, but we're the most isolated we have ever been since the existence of Adam and Eve. We are scattered. We are disconnected. We are disassociated from other people. And it doesn't matter how many likes, how many people comment on your post, how many people forward it and share it. You are still disconnected from that person. And we are all disconnected. A lack of direction. That's the audience that Jesus had too. And that's why he had compassion on them. And that is the same compassion, I promise you, the same compassion that Jesus has right now for everyone you come into contact with in your career. The next verse, verse 36, it ends with him saying, they were lost, disconnected, helpless, confused, like sheep without a shepherd. Sheep without a shepherd. And here's where I really want you to lean in on what we're talking about today. God himself moved with compassion. He had love for other people, just like the people at your job that you come into contact with at work, just like your coworkers. He was moved with compassion. Oppressed people, exhausted people, people in need of direction, people in need of purpose. Why? Like sheep without a shepherd. And we know that God seeks out those lost sheep. You were one of those lost sheep. I was one of those lost sheep. And we have a good shepherd who went looking for us and who found us. And now, he has something for you. You see that word compassion that we find in verse 36. It's translated, it's a Greek word that has been translated into compassion. We are told that Jesus was moved toward people with compassion. Now, there is no one single English word that adequately describes what that Greek word means. So I want to give you the real meaning, the bigger meaning of this word, and it requires more words, so I'm going to use all of them. Here's what they mean. The word, that one word translated compassion, means this. It does mean compassion, and it means pity, and it means sympathy, and it means warmth, and it means this. His heart went out to them. It means he had an internal gut response, and it was to offer care and effective action. That's what it means. Jesus came to meet their needs. And he was moved in his gut with compassion. And I would say, Jesus is certainly kind. And then, this is where you and I come in. Jesus sends others out to meet those loving, compassionate needs on his behalf. Here's the very next verse. So it goes from Jesus being moved with compassion and all that that word means. And here's what he says next. Verse 37. He said to his disciples, "The harvest is great, but the workers are few. So pray to the Lord, who is in charge of the harvest," it's his, "and ask him to send more and more and more and more workers into his fields." And I will have you know, the disciples who followed Jesus, who lived with Jesus, were loyal to Jesus, they prayed that prayer as Jesus commanded. How do I know? Because you are here. They prayed for you. The disciples and Jesus prayed for you to be moved with compassion. And you are here. You are following Jesus. To be moved with compassion, to be moved with pity, with love, with sympathy, with warmth. And he's placed you in the career in which you find yourself now. Whether retired, or homemaking, or working for an employer, or self-employed, or whether you're a student, he and the disciples prayed for you to show up in that harvest with yet another opportunity to represent him and to be moved with compassion, to respond to people in your workplace the way he responds to them. With compassion and sympathy and warmth, allowing your hearts to go out to them, allowing your gut response to be one of caring and effective action. So, I'm sorry I made the kids cry. What should your career goals be? Let's be disciples at work. Let's be more and more and more kind. Keep your excellence high, your best effort all the time. You're representing him. Integrity. Do the right thing even when nobody is looking. You're representing him. No compromising shortcuts. How will you know? Because you're growing and being transformed. Don't forget, you're representing him. And don't forget, you are there for a purpose. Will you join us this year and set these as your new career goals? Will you set these right alongside of your other goals that you have at work and in your family? Will you set these right beside them? Will you make these your career goals? Be disciples at work. All of us. All the time. Let's pray. God, thank you that we are disciples under construction. That you are working to transform us and to rearrange us. Thank you. Thank you that you are working to change our lives. Thank you. And thank you that it does not stop in this building. But God, you are changing us even at work. And may we take that life being constructed to work with us every day. May we be more and more and more kind. May we remember we are there for a purpose. Jesus, you are the way maker. For everyone we work with, you have a plan for their lives. You will make a way for them to spend eternity with you. You will transform their lives. You will take them out of their depression and out of their trouble and out of their trauma. And you will transform them. You make a way. Jesus, may we represent at work. In the name of Jesus, we ask, help this to be true of our lives.